Okay, hello, good morning everyone. We are doing the chapter in the book. It's called The Watchful Servants and the Wise Manager. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, Fred did Watchful Servants Part 1. It suggested we break it into Part 2. Thankfully, Fred had done some homework for me for the second part, so I've got some things from him. The catchphrase is watch and be ready. Today we're going to talk about the wise and wicked managers. Took me a minute. There's the master, the manager, who is technically a servant and over the servants. Because when I thought manager, I thought, well, he's high up. He's not. He's the person, the master that's in charge of the servants. So the wise and wicked manager of the servants is what we're going to talk about today for part 2. But I'll recap a little bit. Fred talked about being patient, being watchful, and most importantly, being ready. And that's what this lesson is all about, the parables to teach us about being prepared for Jesus' return and to be watchful and not to be caught, lazy and not doing what you should do. As illustrated in Mark 13:32, and I'll just read what the notes I have. No one knows the day or hour when these things will happen, not even the angels in heaven or the Son himself. Only the Father knows. So, talking about Jesus' return. So Jesus' parable is about preparing us for his return, urging us to be ready, because no one knows when that will happen. He compares it to a servant whose master has gone out. We really broke down how we must assume things are done differently back then compared to how things are done now in our women's Bible study group on Wednesday when we were learning about Sarah. It took a minute. Poor Sarah. Yeah. Poor Sarah. It was a very interesting lesson. It was definitely a deep dive into Sarah. Real deep. I urge anyone who can to come to the next one. We're going to talk about Hagar. She was Sarah's servant. Please come. It's a great discussion. It's awesome fellowship. We really, like I said, took a deep dive, starting in the women of the Bible and ourselves, I think, a little bit, because we were really kind of realizing things about ourselves when we put ourselves in the perspective of Sarah in that time and when things were done. But anyway, I digress. If a servant's master went out for the evening, that didn't mean he got the night off. It didn't mean that he went to bed early or went out partying or whatever. That meant that the opposite. If you were a good and faithful servant, you prepared for your master's return, regardless of when that was. It could have been in a few hours or a few days. It could be in the morning or in the middle of the night. You don't know. And so a good servant had to be ready for his return and be prepared to take care of his needs. To be there if he was hungry, if he was tired, if he needed whatever, being prepared. Does that sound familiar? We should be prepared. So, like I said, Fred had the catchphrase, he really had to watch. Be watchful. So in short, a good servant is prepared and ready. And for the master's return, he will trust him with much. The master will trust the manager with much. If he can be trusted with items that are small and menial, like taking care of the house or making sure the other servants are fed or well taken care of, things that he may not know if he did or didn't do, but if you took great care in those, then he will entrust him with much, much more. Because if you can be trustworthy and honorable and take care of the small little things that doesn't seem to mean anything to anyone, then you can definitely be trusted, with bigger things that do matter, that people do see. Again, he'll be trusted with possessions, responsibilities of great value, kind of like we are. And learning the word and sharing Jesus and preparing. But Jesus teaches us to prepare for his return, make sure we know that we are of great value and that we shouldn't worry. We should help those less fortunate than ourselves. And remember that our treasure is in heaven. It's not here on earth, our treasure is in heaven. What a person values is a matter of the heart. Luke 12:34 says, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Now let's go on to the second part of this lesson, the wise and wicked managers. Would someone like to read Luke chapter 12, verse 41 through 48? I know they're not going to. Well, these, if they may be, Fred may have touched these. I don't even know why I wrote them.
Peter asked, Lord, you telling these parables to us or to everyone? The Lord answered, who then is the faithful and wise manager, whom the master puts in charge of his servants to give them their food allowance at the proper time? It will be good for that servant whom the master finds doing so when he returns. Truly I tell you, he will put him in charge of all his possessions. But suppose the servant says to himself, my master is taking a long time in coming, and then he begins to beat the other servants. But men and women and to eat and drink and get drunk. The master of the servants will come one day when he does not expect him at an hour he is not aware of. He will cut him into pieces and assign him to a place with the unbelievers. The servant who knows the master will and does not get ready or does not do what the master wants will be beaten with many blows. But the one who does not know and does things deserving punishment will be beaten with few blows. From everyone who has been given much will be demanded, and from the one who has been entrusted will much more will be asked.
Thank you. It reminds me of Spider-Man. What does he always say? With great power comes great responsibility or something. Is that it? I think of Spider-Man every time I hear that. Okay, so page 113 for everyone that has a book. I'm going to read. We are now going to talk about the difference between a wise and wicked manager, which Luke 12:41 through 48 explains the difference and how they're treated differently accordingly. So it says, Jesus' teaching about preparedness prompted Peter to ask, Lord, are you telling this parable to us or to everyone? Jesus doesn't answer Peter's question directly. Instead, he described the consequences of both faithful and unfaithful service in a parable about a manager. I know we just read that, but I think the book kind of paraphrases it. I don't know if it actually reads the parable like it is in the Bible, so some of it might be repetitive, but a good manager is reliable even in the extended absence of his master. He cares about the other servants and provides for their daily needs. When the master returns, he will put that servant in charge of all the possessions because he has proven himself trustworthy in smaller matters. But in contrast, Jesus describes a manager who is irresponsible. In the lengthy absence of his master, he beats the other servants, both men and women. He is a glutton, he gorges himself with food and gets drunk. What will happen to a cruel and self-indulgent servant if his master returns unexpectedly? His master will cut him in pieces and send him to a place for the unfaithful. The punishment is unbelievably harsh by modern standards, but was practiced in ancient warfare and in the punishment of criminals. It may be, I get this word wrong, Landon, it's not hyperbole. How do you say
hyperbole?
What is it?
Hyperbole.
It may be hyperbole, but it is still a warning of severe punishment. It is not clear in Luke's account if Jesus is referring to the severe discipline of believers or the internal punishment of unbelievers. In Matthew's version, the imagery supports the final judgment of unbelievers. The wicked servant is assigned to a place with hypocrites where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, a figure of speech for extreme suffering and regret, referenced in Matthew 24:51 and Mark 12:38. So, be trustworthy. Luke gives an additional application, not recorded in Matthew, focusing on degrees of punishment. A servant who knows what he should do but doesn't will be more severely punished than a servant who doesn't do anything because he didn't know what to do. These verses clearly suggest degrees of punishment. So like I said, Fred did some homework. We're going to be in Luke chapter 12. We're going to do several down through there. And we're doing the first part of his lesson because I don't know that he intended to break it into 2 parts. So he shared those with me. So the watchful servants, be ready. People who are ready do the following. Luke chapter 12, verse 1. Someone want to read that for me? I can, I'm not. Alan, do you have it? I can read it.
Yeah,
Right?
I can read it. You
Okay.
said chapter 12, verse 1.
Yes.
All right. In the meantime, when an innumerable multitude of people had gathered together so that they trampled one another, he began to say to his disciples, first of all, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees with the hypocrisy.
So, first lesson, people who are ready are not hypocritical. They're sincere. Luke 12, verse 4 through 9.
Okay?
If you want to.
Yeah, that's fine. And I say to you, my friends, do not be afraid of those who kill the body, and after that have no more that they can do. But I will show you whom you should fear. Fear him who, after he is killed, has power to cast into hell. Yes, I say to you, fear him. Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 copper coins, and not one of them is forgotten before God? But the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Do not fear, therefore, you are of more value than many sparrows. Also I say to you, whoever confesses me before men, him the Son of Man also will confess before the angels of God. But he who denies me before men will be denied before the angels of God.
All right, so people who are ready are not fearful, but they're ready to witness. Luke 12, 25 and 26. I love that Fred did these. He gave me little notes and everything. And if worry can't accomplish a little thing like that, what is the use of worrying over bigger things? Look at the lilies and how they grow. They don't work or make their clothing. Yet Solomon, in all his glory, was not dressed as beautifully as they are. And if God cares so wonderfully for flowers that are here today and thrown into the fire tomorrow, he will certainly care for you. Why do you have so little faith? I think I read more than I'm supposed to. Or maybe not enough. Sorry. I've underlined this, so it's hard to see where the canola worries at a single moment to your life, and if worry can't accomplish a little things like that, what's the use of worrying? That's where I should have started. So people who are ready, they don't worry, but they're trusting. Luke 12:34. Someone else read, because I butchered that. 12:34.
Let's see. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also.
Nice. So people who are ready are not greedy, but generous. Luke 12:37. TJ, I think you're ready.
Says that fine. It will be good for those servants whose master finds them watching when he comes. Truly I tell you, he will dress himself to serve, will have them recline at the table, and will come and wait on them.
So people who are ready are not lazy, but diligent. So we've got 5 very important points in the Bible that teach us that to be watchful servants, to be ready. And to recap, people who are ready are not hypocritical, they're sincere. They're not fearful, but ready to witness. They're not worried, but trusting. They're not greedy, but generous. And they're not lazy, but diligent. And then Fred added this verse. I didn't look to see if it was in the book. I think he just felt it appropriate. And it's 1 John 3, verse 2 through 3, and it says, "May your life be more like Jesus, so that when he comes, you will be ready to meet him joyfully." So, and that was the end. It was a little short session, broken in two that way, but anyone have any questions? No? Thank you for coming. Let's get to church. Can't do it like Fred. Mission.